Yeah, welcome. Thanks for listening in. I'm going to talk about returns management, specifically focused on a world where sales are made across various different channels, including marketplaces and social commerce channels. Um, my name is Richard. I look after account management for Rebound globally. Rebound is a returns management provider for end-to-end for based on digital products and physical products, supporting all kinds of returns. So the most obvious type of returns are the online returns, but also focusing on retail returns, repair flows, and also things like end-of-life returns, which are very impactful for printing and imaging industry already. But considering the extended producer responsibility laws for fashion, this is going to be much more important in future as well for fashion companies. All right, so how to grow globally. So I'm not saying this is not an exclusive list. These are a few very important points, and I'm going to link it to returns management, of course. So deliver globally, experience locally. This is one of the key elements when you want to scale globally. I mean, you can think about local delivery options, local payment methods, making sure the consumer feels that they're buying from a company that is trustworthy. And if you link that to marketplace, it's also very relevant, right? Because when you work with marketplace, you do this for a reason. You want to make sure that your experience is actually it's local, right? You want to make sure that marketplace has a good reputation, and that's one of the key reasons why you want to work with the marketplace. If you talk about returns, local refund lead times, so making sure your refund is quick for the consumer is very important, and be clear on your refund policies, and make sure you listen and take into account the local preferences of a consumer. So if you want to grow globally, obviously you need to make sure that local consumers will have a good experience. Deliver customer experience across various channels. This is a key element. I mean, the customer experience as a brand is mostly in your control. However, if you start selling in various channels, it becomes scattered. You are depending sometimes on marketplace policies. However, there is a lot you can do to keep control on a lot of the things regarding customer experience. About your refund policy, you can align that in a very good way. You can control pieces of your logistics. You can work together with customer service departments of marketplaces to make sure that whole experience is more aligned. And that is critical, because when you sell on more and more channels, then the consumer will still have the feeling that they work with a brand and they want to have that aligned experience. End-to-end integrated data and tech. So this is obviously a common theme. So there's two things I want to say about this. So first of all, if you want to scale globally, a very boring topic maybe, but get your item data right. If you have your item data right, you can actually ship across the world. You can ship across borders. There is no limitations. And I think in these days, in terms of all kinds of trade elements changing worldwide, you want to be flexible, and that's a key element. The other piece, which is maybe a little more strategic, I think everyone is aware that AI is going to play a bigger role. The options with AI are going to be bigger and bigger. So what can retailers do? They can make sure their data is complete. They can make sure their data is available in order to be ready to start using AI and get actionable insights. Because many companies are sitting on a pile of data, but it's only worthwhile if you can unlock the value from it. That makes you. So be ready for when AI is really able to give you insights. I think those are 2 points really important to focus on if you want to scale further globally. The last point I want to raise here is connect logistics and technology. What's relevant here is that I think many companies focus on one or the other. So when you, for example, look at returns, and you can invest in a very interesting digital proposition. However, you always need the physical infrastructure to support it. It's never a standalone thing. Think about a very smooth experience for the consumer, but not refunding quickly. That's not a great experience. Or think about, you want to, for example, start offering exchanges to retain revenue, but then how are you gonna make sure that you're not impacted by fraud? Those are like critical questions. We'll go into that a bit later as well. Why it's very important to really think about digital and logistics in a total end-to-end proposition. these are examples of sales channels, and there's a multitude. There's many more. I think you can even argue that there is also there's e-commerce channels, and obviously there's various marketplaces. There's many social channels are popping up, right? For maybe potentially new generations, they're more eager to sell and to buy on things like TikTok and Instagram. So brands need to be trialing that. They need to be ready for that change as well. Maybe a question to the audience: is there anyone selling on less than 3 channels? All right, so could either mean, so probably if the audience would be 5 times bigger, the question would still be no, right? I mean, on average, brands are selling between 4 and 7 channels, but there is actually brands selling on 10 to 15 channels, and that also brings a lot of complexity with it. So customers don't really mind, right? They basically expect to buy and return from anywhere, and they don't think about the consequence or the potential complexity about it. Every channel you add will basically add complexity, potentially friction if you don't organize it well, and also cost. And with cost, I'm not necessarily only talking about actual cost, but also really about the hidden cost. And I'm going into that in a minute. I think there is a lot of work already done by retailers to try to protect their bottom line, because it's well known that returns have a significant impact on your bottom line, on your cost. You need to control that. I think it's also relatively well known that being clear in your return policy, making sure consumer knows what to expect, is actually helping to sell more. That there's analysis and research supporting that. But what is not yet happening so much is that returns is actually viewed as a strategic priority to actually help your top line, so to sell more. And there is a lot of aspects I'm going to highlight that are proving that there is a lot to optimize in returns to help your top line grow. First of all, the impact of returns beyond cost. So I'm not sure to what extent you're aware, but customer acquisition costs, and this is primarily focused on online sales. Those have been rising a lot. So since 2019, every year, acquisition costs have been going up by 50%. That's an average figure in the industry, of course. So that means acquiring new consumers for online businesses is potentially 4 or 5 times more expensive. So that automatically means that the focus goes to other areas to make your business or keep your business profitable. So there's 2 logical opportunities. It's focus on retention, keep the customers you already have, but also how can you easily get access to new customers. And that's where you also get to the marketplace or the social commerce channels, because those kind of channels can give you easy access to new customers, and you don't have to invest a lot of money in acquiring those customers yourselves. However, when you start selling across all those channels, you get complexities. Like I said, there is potential a lot of impact on your bottom line, on your costs, and there's a lot of impact on your top line if not managed well, because of the different policies and the different methodologies, the different requirements that those marketplaces put onto retailers, basically. So what we see is that when there's attention to returns, it mostly goes into the direct cost savings or the visible changes. And there's a few examples on the slide. So obviously there's focus on reducing your cost. So reducing your direct cost is a focus. Increasing potentially charges to consumers. You can think about that. It's a trend in the market, so it's not strange anymore to do it. So it's a theme that is happening and discussed a lot. Look and feel for the consumer, so customer experience, consumer look and feel has a lot of attention. And refunding is a big theme. So those are all good things. This is not wrong. You should do all those things, but there's so much more to do, and those things can potentially even drive a lot more value for your business. So why should returns be a strategic priority? There's no sequence here. It's not from the most to the least important. I'm going to run them through to try to highlight why these aspects are crucial for your business. So returns fraud, and this is a number like 101 billion loss in 24 globally. I don't know if the number is exactly right, but it gives the magnitude. Fraud on returns is huge. it's not strange to think that 10% of all returns are to an extent fraudulent. And I don't mean that it's all intended fraud. It can also be unintended fraud. It can be damage. It can be by accident the wrong product. But 10% is in a way can be impacted by fraud, and that's obviously a huge number when you take that all together. Other things that are directly impacting your bottom line: product quality and information sizing accuracy. And it sounds a bit boring maybe, but the better your product quality, the less returns you're going to get. But the other piece is about information. And if you think about it, if you have your own website and you sell, you're in control of all this information, how it's presented. Is there the right information? Is there sizing tools available, etc., to make sure the consumer is buying the right product? But when you start selling on other channels, this is where it gets complex, because how do you control the quality of the information from your brand on those channels? And that's crucial. So it's very important when you work with marketplaces that you work with the right marketplaces. It's not that you can work with all marketplaces as easily, or they might not want to work with you on that. But we believe it's very important to get that experience aligned very well, because in the end, the number of returns that come from that are increasingly high. And obviously there's data, and that was a point I tried to make in the beginning. If you have your data aligned across all these sales channels and returns channels, then of course associated to that, then you can start to unlock and actionable insights to reduce fraud and to prevent returns actually. And there's an immense impact you can make. A low resale rate. So anyone in the audience that has a resale rate higher than 80%, and with resale rate I mean returns coming back, the percentage of returns coming back that you actually sell again into the market. Anyone more than 80%. So it either means that the resale rate for most of you is lower, or you don't know. And I think what we experience a lot is that this kind of information, which is crucial in the end, is either not known or it's actually lower, because data suggests is more 60 to 70%. It is a rough number, and it depends a lot per industry, and it depends if you have luxury items, fast fashion. So this number is not a fact. But if you think about it, if you don't sell 30% of your products that return, then if you calculate that back to your total revenue and total cost, that's a huge value. But also if you imagine that you spend all those costs on shipping all those returns back. So should you not be a bit smarter than with data and determining which product needs to go back and when and how quickly? And this is where a lot of value can be added. Missed revenue from returns is a bit aligned to that. But think about things like store credit, exchanges. Obviously, you turn a return immediately into new value. That's crucial. Think about Ecommerce channels. If your products are no longer sellable in the optimal state, make sure you at least try to get some revenue. There is a lot of options. And not only shipping your returns all the way back, but also making decisions earlier on in the returns journey to accommodate that. Stock imbalances. There is a lot of reason to think that you're also depending to an extent on your returns to keep your stock available. Depends obviously on the brand, depends on your stock policy and how you deal with inventory. But a lot of your stock is actually in returns transition, and that's obviously that's a very important theme. So having that visibility and also making sure that stock is going to the right place is going to help you to sell more. So also again a top line impact. I touched already a little bit on moving returns across the globe for no good reason. So there's many reasons why you would not move a return. Or if the value is very low, then maybe the business case is not even worth it to ship the return with an airplane across the ocean. You might want to keep that return local, find a local solution with an off-price channel, with another channel, maybe with a store you have, with the store presence you have there. You want to make those decisions earlier on to actually get the value from it. And something I think that everybody very aware of, the customer service impact. I mean, when there's a lot of calls coming, where's my refund? There's not only impacting basic administration of work for your teams, it's also not giving the trust for the consumer to buy again. And that impact is can be pretty substantial. So many reasons to underline that the bottom line impact for returns can be huge, but the top line potential can be a lot bigger. Then if you start selling via multiple channels, then there is obviously benefits and challenges. I think everybody and every retailer is in this is in the same like mixed position of, okay, I prefer to sell via my own channel, but maybe it's smart for my business to start selling in other channels. So, for example, we saw earlier that customer acquisition is increasingly expensive. So that means it's increasingly more attractive to potentially utilize existing infrastructure for marketplace that already has a good position, a trustworthy position in a certain geography that you might not be that active in. So increased reach of customers is one of the benefits. Lower customer acquisition costs, but also the infrastructure is to a large extent already there, right? Payments, logistics, customer service might already be facilitated. So that can help you a lot. It's easier to scale, and it's a way to discover your brand by consumers in other markets without spending the initial investment. So relatively low barrier to see how the product is doing in new markets. But there is major challenges in relation to marketplaces. I mean, as some of you will likely know, every marketplace has SLAs and requirements. And that can be refund lead time. That can be how quick you deliver to a consumer. It's not only returns, it's outbound returns, it's customer service, it's how you deal with all aspects, packaging, etc. There might be a lack of returns infrastructure. Not all marketplaces have thought this through. So there might be not even a very good option. So you need to take that control in on your own. Visibility becomes challenging when you work on multiple sales channels because the data can be scattered. You start competing with other brands directly. It's more difficult to distinguish yourselves. And as I said earlier, I still find it very crucial to work with marketplaces to make sure your product is right. It's like presented as it would be on your own website, and that is an important point. But also think about brand protection. I mean, when you potentially work with a marketplace that is not in line with your standards, or they don't want to work with you for how to deal with customer service or how to deal with refund lead times, then suddenly you might be impacted in a bad way. Also think about, in terms of brand protection, what kind of products are you selling? At what price? Are you not hijacking your own business by selling it for a low price on the marketplace? So think about which assortment you're actually going to sell. So there's a lot of benefits and challenges, but it definitely creates complexity, but also very much possibilities. This is where Rebound is particularly focused on. So connecting all these different channels from a return perspective. So whether it's e-commerce, whether it's your stores, whether it's outlets, marketplaces like Zalando or social commerce channels like TikTok Shop, bringing those returns physically and digitally together enables you to create the top line advantages that I spoke about earlier in relation to fraud, returns prevention, how to increase your resale rate. All aspects that can deliver a lot of value. So when we talk about omnichannel returns, it's a mix of digital products, software, but also the physical infrastructure to support it. There's 4 key elements. I'm going to run through it one by one. It's one solution supporting all channels, so you can harmonize your options across the different channels. So if you offer a return option in country A on your own website, you can align that with all the marketplaces you work with, but also about notifications, tracking updates. So you can still deliver a consistent customer experience with limitations, yes, because you have no control. You don't have everything under control when it's not your own website, but you can still have a very consistent customer experience. We believe it's very important. Localized return logistics is going about the point I raised earlier. Rebound has hubs across the world in many key markets. which allows you to work with local carriers, but also allows you to make decisions on item level of returns very early on. And that touches a little bit on the earlier pieces about if you do that, that allows you, for example, to speed up. Let's say you have SKUs that are in high demand. You want to fast track those potentially, or you want to split them out and deliver them separately from the low in stock items. And therefore, if you speed up the total lead time of getting a return back, then the opportunity to sell that item again is much higher versus the other way around. Centralized data and reporting. As I said, I think the opportunity with AI is going to be increasingly big. Having all the returns for all the different channels in one data set, being able to use that data and input it in tools that are available in the market, are becoming increasingly available, can unlock a lot of value, because the actionable insights you're going to get from that are going to help you to do all the things we discussed of fraud, return prevention. We also have an automated fraud detection process as part of our standard proposition already. I'm going into that a little bit. This is about detecting risk. It's about also business rules we can apply, and also simply helping your customer service teams. A very pragmatic way how let's say data is being supported by physical activities to actually attack fraud. Consistent consumer experience is the first one. So it shouldn't really matter if it's like if you're selling on your own website, if you're selling on Zalando, you're selling on TikTok. The customer experience should be in a way controlled as much as you can. And I'm not talking about the front end experience, because when you shop on TikTok, it's TikTok's experience. When you shop on Zalando, it's Zalando's experience. When it's on your website, it's your experience. But on the back end, you can control a lot. And then in the end, also the consumer is they want to have the feeling of control, that if wherever they buy, they can still have this 5-day reference lead time, as an example. That your principles that you have as a brand are respected on all channels, and you can actually work with the right marketplace to do that. And the right marketplace there's not a single-handed answer here. It depends on the brand, depends on what you want to achieve. This is one of the elements. The localized returns, where I just went into a little bit. It's a very easy way to make sure you can refund very quickly without any fraud risk, because you're actually validating physically the items in a couple of days. You refund, and that's one process done. That also means you're automatically marketplace compliant, we call it. So wherever you sell, our network will enable you to be compliant to all returns requirements they have. And as I hinted on a little bit, you can make smart decisions early on. Because when a return is, let's say, initiated in the US, has to go back to the UK. In the US, you can make those decisions. So it comes into a location, and based on the item data, you make decisions. So low value items, you keep in country. High in demand, you fast track. And this is just examples. Damaged goods, you might be selling to an off-price channel. Examples of how you can take advantage of that. Data and returns. So because we serve all these different channels from a returns perspective, all the data is available in the same way. It will be processed via the same software, and it will be made available in one structure. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but that is a key element in future, to be able to do that. And then think about things like, hey, what time was it actually sent? Because in the middle of the night on a strange IP address, links gives a fraud risk element. Payment methods determine fraud risks. So there's all kinds of probabilities you can calculate, and based on those probabilities and risks assessments, you can make decisions. And those decisions can lead to physical activities you want to do based on the risk that's associated with that. And our network allows to do that. But also this data can be used to prevent returns, to make changes to the product quality, to make changes to how you position your products on the different channels you're selling on. So what do we do today in terms of fraud detection? A big team in the returns world, and something that is relatively untouched in a way. So there's a digital element, which is key, which is using data to predict fraud with probabilities. However, if you only do that, it will be hard to act on it. Because if you think about that, you can have a lot of probabilities, but you cannot say no to a refund to consumer based on probability. You might be wrong. So you need to associate probability with physical activities. So what we, for example, do is based on the different probabilities, we take different actions. So we register items, we grade items. For example, we take pictures of damaged items on targeted returns. So you don't want to have all those costs for all those returns, because then the value might not be there. But based on probabilities, doing those activities, giving your customer service teams actually the ammunition to also really support decision making on whether to refund or not, is a team that is getting more attention and is also gonna help to prevent a lot of costs. A little bit about the future, where we think the future is gonna go. This dynamic routing. Dynamic routing is something we are developing, and we are likely going to be launching end of this year. And what that means, and the difference of what I've just been discussing, is that currently we can make all kinds of smart decisions already. I think that's been hopefully clear from my story. But it always needs to go first to a location to make these smart decisions. We believe that if we make these decisions already from a data point of view, so the moment a consumer initiates a return, you should already be able to make those decisions. And then think about it. If you already on the data know that you need an item back, you just simply give that consumer only an express option. And you make it look like a premium experience for the consumer. But you have that item back in 2 days instead of potentially 15 days. You can resell. It's going to significantly help your resale rate. Other examples on the slide here as well, like if it's damaged, you might want to ship it immediately somewhere else. Because based on the return reason, you can already get a lot of information. It's not always correct. You can get a lot of information. Also, in terms of value, you might not even want to ship a product with low value. Maybe you want to prevent all costs associated, or you maybe want to pursue immediately into a off-price channel instead of moving it via different touch points in a network. So dynamic routing is a way to use real-time data, fraud signals, as I mentioned, based on probabilities, product logic to really minimize cost and maximize return on investment. And this is where really the digital and the physical element come together. Because digitally you can make a lot of available, but physically you need to execute on it. And physically executing you cannot just do in your own warehouse, because that means you still need to ship everything all the way back to where you operate from. Making those decisions early on is crucial. That brings me back to how Rebound is positioned in the market. So we have our digital products and we have our physical products, and we combine this by offering data and insights and orchestration. And we believe this is going to be even more important towards the future with the possibilities it's going to give. Making it a little bit easier even. I mean, there's a lot of complexities in what I've just said, and there's a lot of probably arguments to say, hey, maybe it doesn't work like that, or maybe a probability is not enough, or maybe it's nice that you say that you can prevent returns, but actually somebody needs to take an action. We first need to create actionable insights. We can help with that, but even if you have actionable insight, you need to act on it. So there's a lot of reasons why it may not perfectly work. Just bringing it back to a very simple slide. This is how we are modularly built up. So we have initiation products, which means a consumer can initiate a return, a store can initiate a return, a return can be initiated on a marketplace or social commerce channel, and it doesn't have to be a Rebound product. It can be any front-facing customer experience. We are very much back-end integrated with many different visible experiences. We have our logistics piece in terms of ship and track. So that's all the moving parts, all the returns flowing through the world. And we have our processing piece. There's our smart software. All our physical hubs are equipped with our software. And that software is able to make all these smart decisions I talked about before. And obviously, in the end, a product needs to go to what the next best location is. This we do on a global scale. So obviously this is focused on Europe, US, Canada, Australia, the bigger markets, but this product works essentially on a global scale. So if you summarize everything and you link returns again to all these sales channels, then there's a few things that are really key. It's about avoiding those return costs, and there's actual real possibilities to avoid return costs. And I don't want to call too much numbers, because numbers are, I mean, it's difficult to substantiate it with real numbers, but if you consider that that 10% of returns is potentially fraudulent, if you can save only 20% of that, then that's already 2% of your total returns, right? So there's a lot of big money into this. Preventing incorrect refunds, so targeting fraud, and maybe even more important, grow your revenue. Turn these returns into revenue. So we talked about, hey, you have store credit and exchange options to turn it into immediate revenue. But you also have the Ecommerce channels. Make sure you if you cannot sell it anymore via the regular channels, you can at least sell it in a different channel. Boosting loyalty, so fast and localized refunds remains key, has been key already, remains key to be able to refund quickly and do this in a validated way. Don't make assumptions. You will likely be impacted by fraud, or at least have a big risk, because consumers also will at some point know if you refund them without actual checks. And then we see also examples of retailers being heavily targeted in terms of fraud. And streamline this consumer experience, like touched upon already. Even if you work with various sales channels, you have a lot of influence on the consumer experience. Scale across the networks. So having one return engines behind all those different channels, sometimes visible, sometimes invisible, gives you all this data in a streamlined way and gives you options to make smart decisions. This is where we think we need to go. And obviously we handle global growth with local execution. Maybe the first point I made, make sure local consumers trust you, whether or not it's via your own channels or whether or not you choose the right marketplaces to help you sell more in various geographies. To end, so you cannot control marketplace, but you can, to a large extent, control the returns associated with all these channels. Complexity, it is complex. It's definitely not easy to solve this problem, but you can prevent the chaos around it. Very happy to answer questions. I'm going to look at the screen in a minute, or I'm happy to throw that box into the audience as well. And also, I would be very happy to answer, have a conversation at our booth, or just quick after the presentation. Thank you.